I just finished my final semester of college. I decided to take a road trip of the United States that fall. I packed up all my belongings in my car and just started to drive. I was driving through the South around August, when all of a sudden my car broke down. I packed up my clothes and my important stuff like my computer and decided to hit the road. I didn't get that far when I saw a large mansion on the top of a hill. It was an old-fashioned Southern-style mansion covered in white and absolutely beautiful. It stuck out like a sore thumb in the rest of the countryside, so I decided to take a look. The fence did not look all that big, so I decided to jump it. I wasn't a very large man. I was only about 5 feet 6 inches and weighed about 125 pounds. I still looked like a teenager and it was very hard for me to buy alcohol. The landscape was magnificent as I strolled around the house. It was extremely old-fashioned and I was completely taken away. I walked up to the front door looking for anything of value. The reason I stopped by in the first place. I saw a little statue of a dog and I picked it up and started to walk away. I was almost out of sight when I heard a voice say, "Stop right there, mister." I was completely terrified. I was actually caught. I could not believe it. I couldn't move another foot until she came towards me. She was dressed to kill. In her tall red heels that seemed to overpower me, the blood-red business suit, the perfect makeup, the gold jewelry and the tight hair, I was mesmerized. She looked very wealthy and at about the age of my own mother. She took the dog statue out of my hands and yelled at me to get inside. I was about to run for it, but she looked too powerful for me and I was completely shocked to do anything but comply and walk inside with her. I have never been so terrified in my life. The inside was just as, or almost as beautiful as the outside. She directed me to the kitchen and she told me to sit down. I was shaking in my shoes as she looked me. She picked up the phone and said to me, "You want me to call the cops on you?" I immediately shook my head, as I did not want to become somebody's prisoner bitch. She smiled a little as she hung up the phone. She sat down across the table. We began to talk and I began to tell her of my past. She introduced herself as Mrs. O'Hara. She also told me that she is widowed and she had a daughter who moved out already. She told me the closest town was about 10 miles around and she pretty much ran the town anyway. She invited me to stay the night since it was already getting late and I agreed since I haven't slept in a house in months. She led me upstairs and told me to get in the shower while she gets dinner ready. I smiled gently and took a much-needed shower. My hair was a mess and when it was totally wet, it would fall over my entire face. I got out of the shower and noticed that there were only pink towels and decided to dry myself with one. I couldn't find any of my old clothes, so I wrapped the towel around my privates and walked to find her. I found her at the end of the hall and I was completely shocked again. My entire bag was laid out on the bed as she has gone through it. What the hell is the meaning of this? I wanted to look through your book bag just in case you have any weapons to hurt me at night, and what do I find? Filth. What is this? She is talking about my favorite porno magazine that I bought from a newsstand. I tried to mumble an answer but she quickly cut me off. I don't want to hear your lies. Put on your clothes and meet me downstairs. We have something to talk about. Nobody has figured out my secret and now SHE knew it. I was terrified and put on my pajamas and walked downstairs. I found her at the kitchen table with 2 plates of food. The meal was delicious and I ate every drop of it. We did not speak a word until the dessert was cleared. She sat down and began to speak. I first catch you stealing, then I catch you with a dirty magazine. I could turn you over to the cops and you could be in a jail for a long time. But I am not going to do that. I don't believe in that type of punishment and I will make my own punishment. You will stay here until I say you can leave. This is your new home and if you try to leave I will have the cops on you like a pack of dogs on a 3-legged cat. Tomorrow we are going to have some changes to fix your mood. Until then, I wish you good night. She quickly exited and I went to my room. I was completely shocked and had a wave of dread come over me. I was tossing and turning the entire night. I just hope and pray Mrs. O'Hara is kind to me. I finally woke up the next morning after getting barely any sleep at all. It was extremely difficult to sleep with so much on my mind. I went downstairs and found some hot oatmeal ready for me. I looked around for her, but I could not find her. I decided to dig in on my meal. I was halfway through my meal when I saw Mrs. O'Hara come walking in. I almost dropped my spoon at the sight of her. She had on a very tight short white dress, white heels, and a beautiful white purse. She said to me, "It's not polite to stare, sweetie. I am going out for some errands. I will be back tonight. I trust you not to leave because of what I said last night." She gave me a very chilling cold glance reminding me of what she said, and she suddenly disappeared. I finished my breakfast and went upstairs for a shower and a change. I had the house to myself and decided for a little walk along the place. I went outside and finally took notice at how large the estate really was. It was at least a couple of acres large, and I decided to see the extent of it. But as I reached the end of it, I noticed the same fence that went around the estate like a large rectangle. Everything was very symmetrical and very old-fashioned. It was like going back in time to the Old South, or better yet, going on the set of Gone with the Wind. I haven't noticed how the time has suddenly drifted away and it was already nightfall. I came inside to notice Mrs. O'Hara at the kitchen table. I went inside and she quickly directed me to sit down. I was sweating up a storm because of the southern summer storm, and she offered me a glass of lemonade, which I gladly accepted. "I see you decided to go gallivanting around without my permission." I tried to speak, but she quickly quieted me. "Don't interrupt. I went into town today to run some errands. I did a background check of who you are and noticed that you indeed had no family. So I took the liberty of giving you a family and adopting you." I was rather stunned by this notion, but I remember what she told me yesterday and replied meekly with a thank you. She gave me a birth certificate with my new name, but something shocked me. Mrs. O'Hara, this birth certificate, it isn't right." She stood with a sly little smile and began to elaborate for me. "No, it isn't, sweetie. I have adopted you as my daughter, Rose O'Hara. This what I said yesterday when I told you that you needed some attitude adjustment. You will always be known as my daughter and you will live accordingly." I was in complete shock, but I could only simply nod. With all that has happened, I had no other choice, as she has cornered me into a wall and this is my only escape. Her face lit up on fire as she saw my reaction. "Well, that is wonderful, sweetheart. Let us get you out of those icky boy clothes and into some nice new clothes because we have a huge day between the two of us tomorrow." My heart sank to the floor. "Thank you, Mrs. O'Hara." The dread was coming over me, but I was trying to think of the best that this could possibly be. She giggled gently and came over to me. "You don't have to call me Mrs. O'Hara now. You will call me Mother." She smiled as she gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, as she pulled me up from my seat and upstairs. My new life has begun. I quickly walked up the long, spiral staircase as she followed me in hot pursuit. I went down the hall to my old room and walked inside. I was completely shocked at what I saw. My suitcase was gone and so were all of my belongings. The old room was torn apart and it looked like it was having some remolding done. Mrs. O'Hara just giggled at me as she directed me back down the hall. "Silly girl, that is not your room. This is your room." She opened a door across the hall from her own room. I was never in so much shock in all of my life when I took a look inside. The first object that caught my eye was the very large four-post, canopy bed. It was dripping with white lace and a mountain of small pillows. I took a closer look around the room. There was a vanity mirror and station in the corner, which was white with pink borders. There was a full-length mirror on the outside of a giant walk-in closet. My mouth nearly hit the floor, or china, when I saw the giant collection of porcelain dolls hanging right near the bed. Each one looked really expensive and very feminine. I finally saw Mrs. O'Hara standing outside another door, which she opened and showed me my own bathroom. "I can see that my pumpkin loves her new room. I have already started a bath for you. Sit in there for 20 minutes and when you are done, dinner will be ready." She walked over to me and kissed my cheek as she left the room. I felt like I was in a dream as I took a new glance at my room. I could not believe this place. This was my room. This was now a 21-year-old boy's room. I felt like I was 6 or even younger. I slowly took off my sweats and went into the bathroom. The bathroom was even more unbelievable. It had an old-fashioned looking tub while everything was covered in marble. This lady was rich beyond her belief. I pondered about that as I slowly went into the tub. The water was hotter than usual. It shocked me at first, but I got used to it after a while. It was very soothing after the couple of days I have been through. I was about to fall asleep when I heard her voice. "Don't forget to wash everywhere, even your hair, sweetheart." Her sweet southern voice brought me back to reality. I saw that there was both a shampoo and a conditioner for me to use. I have never used both of them, so I decided to try and impress her a little. I tried to get as clean as I could. I put the soap all over my body. Every inch was covered with soap and it felt very nice. When about 20 minutes came up, I finally arose from my tub. I grabbed the closest towel, which was a very soft and pink towel. I dried myself and was completely amazed at what happened. All of the hair that I had was gone. I used to have a lot of leg hair, but now my very long legs were completely bare. My underarms, my face, and even my special place were completely hairless. I stared at myself for at least 5 minutes, not believing this was happening. I stepped out of the room with the towel covering me, looking for my sweats, but they were long gone by now. All I could see was the big, bright pink bathrobe in front of me. I slowly put it on and tied it in front of me. It did feel extremely soft and very warm. I admit that I did like it, even though I looked like a little girl. I put my hair in a small ponytail and walked downstairs. Mrs. O'Hara greeted me with a giant hug and another kiss on the cheek. "You look adorable and you smell absolutely wonderful. Don't you feel better, my princess?" I nodded slowly, with a tiny blush, as I took my seat at the table. She put a large, mouth-watering dinner in front of me and I dug in. After I was full, I had to ask her something. Mrs. O'Hara." I was immediately interrupted as she quickly said to me, "Remember, cutie, call me mother. Your forgetfulness leaves me very upset." I was completely lost for words, but found them after a couple drinks of my milk. "Mother, why is all my hair all gone?" She gave me another look of displeasure. "Tomorrow we will have to work on your dictation and speaking skills. And the answer to your question, sugar, is what kind of girl would walk around with hairy legs? That is not proper." I was about to argue a little, but I quickly shut my mouth. She came over to me and took my dish and drink away. "It is okay, darling. There will be many changes in your life. You are now my daughter and I do not want an uncouth slut walking around. You will be raised my way 'cause I am your mother. Right, Cupcake?" I nodded my head slowly, looking towards the floor. She came over and raised me to my feet. "Come on, dear, you need to get to bed. We have a big day." I shook a little in fear, not knowing as what could happen tomorrow. She grabbed me by elbow like a vice and followed me up to my room. It was a very long and quiet walk to my new room. When we finally did reach the entrance, I was still in shock that this could be my room. She followed behind me and began directing me. "Go use the potty and wait in there for me, sweetie. I am going to find some clothes for you to wear tonight." I walked into the bathroom and sat down on the toilet. It felt weird sitting on the toilet with my pink robe. My mind could not leave the words she said earlier about tomorrow. What could she have in store for me tomorrow? What more does she want of me? I couldn't contemplate the answers because she was already calling for me. "Honey, come on. You need your beauty rest." I quickly finished using the potty and walked outside. She was standing by the vanity mirror, and I walked up to her. She guided me to sit down and I did. The chair was very strange. It was rather small and with the backing to it, I had to sit very erect. It was very old-fashioned, just like everything else I have seen. "Put your hands on the table, Cupcake. I am going to paint your fingernails tonight so they can dry by tomorrow." I slowly put my hands on the table and spread my fingers apart. My short nails were not something that impressed her. She shook her head and said to me in a softly disgusted tone, "We'll just have to make do right now, and I'll decide if you need false ones when you go out in public." The word, public, hit me like an atom bomb. I couldn't even comprehend going out in public like I was. I did not speak a word as she painted my fingernails. She began to hum softly as she was painting them. One thing I did notice is that she seemed very happy ever since I became her daughter. It was very nice to see this lonely old woman smile and be so happy. After she finished with my fingernails, she got out a beautiful white brush. She took out my ponytail and she slowly began to brush my hair. The process took much longer compared to when I would comb my own hair. She seemed to put more emphasis on the very tedious process. I could only sit back and listen to her humming, which was oddly enough luring me to sleep. Once she was finished, my golden blonde hair seemed to have more shine and more bounce than normal. "There we go, pumpkin. Your hair is very beautiful and you should put more care into it. I will just have to change that. In any case, I can see my little daughter is getting all tuckered out, so let's get you to bed." I nodded with approval and a very small smile. I liked my hair and how it looked. She quickly picked up my nightgown to show me it. It was a soft pink satin nightgown. It looked like it could reach my knees or even further. It had little sleeves and little pink bows around the edge of the neck. There was even a pair of panties to match with an equal amount of ruffles and bows around the edges. I was in disbelief at the garment and for the lack of privacy that I was getting. "Come on, slowpoke. I don't have all night to watch you stare at your nightgown," she said, and quickly pulled the tie of my robe. The robe quickly fell off, and I was completely naked in front of her. I automatically tried to cover myself, but she just laughed and helped me into my nightgown and the panties. It was my very first panties. She put down the bed and I slid in, literally. The combination of the sheets and the nightgown seemed very slippery. But in a very odd way, they felt very comfortable against my own body. She tucked me in tightly and sat down next to me. "I am so glad of you today, Rose. You were very cooperative of your new life. I can see that we will be having many good days ahead. Now rest up because you and Mommy have a big day ahead." She kissed me on my forehead and left me alone. The dread feeling came back as I drifted off to sleep. After some deliberation, I finally was able to fall asleep. As quickly as I went to sleep, I felt the sunlight coming against the curtains. I slowly began to open my eyes to Mrs. O'Hara sitting next to me on the bed. "Good morning, sunshine. It is time to get up as we have a big day in front of us." My eyes began to slowly adjust to waking up, and I noticed that it was dawn as the sun began to creep over the land. I also felt a strange sensation near my crotch. I sat up and looked down and noticed that I had wet the bed. A large wet spot formed around my crotch. Miss O'Hara had noticed the mess and just smiled. "It seems my little girl is still just a little girl, no time for that. You need to come downstairs and eat your breakfast. Your clothes are near the door. Meet me downstairs." I was surprised at her reaction to my mess on the bed. I got out of the bed and went to my clothes. I noticed that same pink fluffy robe that I wore the night before. I also noticed some slippers for me to wear. They were a soft pink with about a half-inch heel on them. I put them on and tied the robe tightly against my body. I walked downstairs to breakfast, my slippers clicking all the way. I noticed at the table a bowl of oatmeal and some orange juice. I did not argue and went to eat. Mrs. O'Hara left the room and went upstairs. After I finished my breakfast, I went upstairs and saw her in my room. "I readied a bath for you, sweetie. Make sure to wash all over. I'll be there in a couple of minutes to make sure you did." I quickly went into the bathroom and disrobed. Another bubble bath was ready for me, and I sunk in. I was still soaking in the bath when the door opened and she came walking in. A broad smile was on her face. Time to make my little girl all squeaky clean. She put on a rubber apron that was on the door and she began to wash me thoroughly. I noticed her attire for the day. Her hair was done, professionally, up in a bun on her head. She had on a soft white sundress that was very elegant and showed her nice frame. She did look very stunning to me. Suddenly, she popped my fantasy and told me to get out. She covered my hair in a pink towel, and my body as well. She told me to brush my teeth thoroughly, and when I was finished, to come out to get dressed. I found a toothbrush and did exactly that. I came out and saw the clothing. I tried to protest, but like many times before, my voice was somewhere else. She just smiled at me. I know my little girl will just love her clothes today. Come on, sweetie, let's get you ready for today. She first took my hand and led me over to the bed. She took off my towel, and then I was laid back on the bed. I was lying on a diaper, just in case we have any more accidents like this morning. She first put lotion on my area, she then puts massive amounts of powder on me. I smelt like a little girl because of that powder. She tightly put the 2 cloth diapers on me with large pink-headed safety pins. She then put on me ruffled, pink plastic panties on me. I was stood up on the floor for the next piece of clothing, which was a soft pink corset. She put it around me and tied it in the back. I could not get it off me without her help, and the corset began hurting. I let out a little yelp in pain. But when she was finished, I saw that I had a flat chest and a small hint of breasts. "You will wear this until you lose some weight," she told me, as got the rest of my clothing. She put on me 2 of the whitest, fluffiest, laciest petticoats I have ever seen. I can understand why I am wearing the corset, because the petticoats are so tight that they barely fit over my chest. They ended a little below my knees. I never have seen anything so feminine. She zipped them up in the back and got the dress ready for me. It was a very soft pink dress that fit perfectly over my petticoats, with a tight bodice, puffy sleeves, and a large pink bow that is tied around me. The dress, I had to admit, was very beautiful. There were buttons on the back, so I could not get it off without her help. She then led me over to the vanity mirror and I sat down. The petticoats and dress fluffed out, and when I straightened them out, they still fell very far. She took off my towel and began to brush my hair. She took extra time with my hair as she brushed it for a very long time. After she brushed my hair out, she took out a large soft white and pink bonnet. It had ruffles along it, and a large tie that she tied under my chin. It was a very feminine and babyish item, as well as very classy. She then put a gold cross around my neck that fell right below my collar. She then rolled up bright white tights up both of my legs. She next put ruffled socks and then soft pink Mary Janes with a 1/2-inch heel. "You will always wear shoes with a heel. We'll start you out with a 1/2-inch and work your way up." I felt I would always be in heels, a corset, petticoats, and a dress no matter what. Some white gloves finished the outfit and I was led out of my room downstairs. "You will learn first how to act like a lady, then we have some shopping today, sweetie. You need a Sunday dress for church tomorrow." I almost fainted right there. For the beginning of the morning, I learned how to become a lady. I learned how to sit correctly, making sure my dress and petticoats did not expose anything. I also learned how to walk correctly, which was very different compared to a man. I took shorter steps and how to walk well with my heels. I learned how to talk with a soft feminine tone, and I also learned how to interact. Mrs. O'Hara told me that since I was so young that I wouldn't be doing much speaking, but I would when I became a teenager. That thought scared me to my bones. Finally, and most importantly, I learned how to curtsy correctly. By the end, I was an expert and could do everything very well. She smiled to me and said, "You have been doing so well this morning, sweetie. You're a natural at deportment. I am so proud of you. I will give you an extra special treat today." She smiled to me as she went to the closet. Since it was late summer, she gave me a jacket. It was a soft pink that fell a little lower than my dress with large buttons. I put it on and she took me outside to go to do some shopping. She put me in the back seat and buckled my seatbelt as she began to drive away from the house. After about 20 minutes on the road, we finally reached a small town. I was nervous at all the people walking up and down Main Street. We reached the end to a small shopping area with a few stores. She parked the car and told me to get out. She took my hand and led me to a small store tucked away in a corner. The store was named Angela's Boutique. We walked in, and a little bell was heard throughout the store. Nobody was inside except for a rather plump woman behind the counter. Mrs. O'Hara and the woman seemed to know each other and were good friends. The woman told us to look around and if we wanted to try on anything we could. We made sure that we did. The store seemed to specialize in everything she needed for me. After about an hour or longer, we finally were done with numerous packages. We got more shoes, more petticoats, accessories, ruffle panties, and a dress for Sunday. It looked like a first communion dress that was very angelic white. I was so ashamed that I would be in that very feminine dress because many people would notice me. We put the packages in the car and went into another store. This store I knew for sure as it was a beauty salon. We went inside and hung up our coats. A young lady told us that our appointment was ready and we should go in the back. We went into the back and met yet another woman. She was in her 40s and was the owner of the shop. The owner, Lisa, was another friend of my mother. She told me that everything was ready, including my medicine. I was shocked to find out that my medicine had been delivered here. I took one shot in the arm and was told that should help with the hair. My mother got some pills for me and then everything was in order. My bonnet was taken off and a bright pink cape was put on me as I was placed on a chair. My mother told me to sit still as Lisa would begin to do some work on me. I was getting very nervous and I couldn't hold it in anymore, so I peed in my diapers right there. I was dipped back, and my hair was shampooed and conditioned by Lisa. She then put some coloring in it and then set it in curlers. The curlers were so small and tight that a tear fell from my eye. After the curling was done, I was put under hair dryer. As my hair was drying, she took off my gloves and began to work on my nails. She put on small false nails on me and painted them a very soft pink to match my attire. Another pain quickly came as both of my ears was pierced and I had very small diamonds in them. A couple minutes later, my hair was finished. I was very thankful because my head felt like it was on fire. Finally, my hair was brushed and then a large pink bow that we bought earlier was placed on top of my head. I finally saw that I had soft blonde ringlets, with a little touch of makeup. I looked very much like a little girl. I looked like a teenage girl in baby girl's attire. Mrs. O'Hara gushed in emotions. "Oh, Rose. You look absolutely precious. You are so beautiful." I did admit that I did look beautiful. I was told to curtsy for Lisa, which I did for Perfect, and we left the store. I didn't wear the bonnet or gloves to show off my new look. Mother was so happy as she exclaimed to me, "Since you have done so well this morning, I am going to treat you to a nice lunch." I was happy cause I was starving, as we went into a little French restaurant next door to the salon. We sat in the back, next to a window looking out at the garden. Mother ordered for me and I sat quietly. She talked the entire time, telling me about her past. I learned that her husband had died 10 years ago and that is how she got so wealthy. She never had a child and she knew I would be perfect for her. Lunch came and we began to eat. We both had salads. She had some chicken, while I had little tiny pieces of vegetables. After we ate, we left the restaurant. As we were leaving, I saw a boy looking at me. Not in disgust, but that he was interested. When we left, my mother pinched me and we both giggled. We decided that we had enough this morning. I actually was getting a little tired. My mother noticed and told me that her baby needs a nap. I smiled as she drove us back home. We put all my new clothes away in my room. My mother helped me take off my clothes. She left on the corset and she changed my diaper. I wore my nightgown again and settled down for a mid-afternoon nap. I awoke to the smell of something cooking. I put on my slippers and robe to go downstairs. I saw my mother finishing up for dinner. I had some soup and a tall glass of milk. The soup made my tummy feel all warm inside. After dinner, I learned a few minor things about my mannerisms. Later that evening, I mastered everything so far. I was beginning to learn how to sew, when my mother told me it was bedtime. I went upstairs and brushed my teeth. My mother brushed my hair some more that evening before I went to bed. She tucked me in, and I was surprisingly tired, considering the nap. She sat down next to me and talked to me sweetly. "I am so proud of you, dearie. You performed excellent at your new status. I have no doubts that you will become my beautiful daughter. I will wake you up early for church tomorrow. You will look your best, tomorrow, in your pretty new dress. After church, we'll go for a walk in the park. How about that?" I smiled to her. She kissed me on the forehead and left the room. I fell asleep much quicker that evening, being more comfortable in my new life. Suddenly, morning came, and Mrs. O'Hara awaked me. The sun was bright and shining through my curtains into my bedroom. I slowly awoke to my mother's smiling face. I also smelled something horrible in the room. I looked down and saw my diaper was soggy and wet. I had messed and peed in my diaper. My mother just smiled at me. She looked beautiful in her Sunday clothes. A beautiful dark blue skirt suit that showed off her beautiful legs. Her hair, makeup, and nails were done to perfection. She looked radiant as I rose. I quickly went downstairs and ate breakfast. I came back upstairs to get dressed for today. She helped me out of my corset and my smelly diaper. "Come on, sunshine. There is a bath ready for you. I'll be there in a few seconds to help you." I slowly went into the bathroom and took my clothes off. I sunk into the warm bubble bath. The scent from the bath filled the air. She came in, quickly, and put on her rubber apron. She washed and conditioned my head thoroughly, and then she did the same to my body. I began to notice how there was no stubble anywhere on my body. The water was drained and I was told to stay in the tub. She pulled out a strange device and told me to get on all fours. Suddenly, my bun was being probed first by her gloved hands and then by a tube. Warm water began flowing into my bun for a while and then it was plugged. I was told to stay like this and she left me. Soon, the pain and cramps began hitting me and I started making sounds of anguish. Finally, my mother came in and told me I could release, which felt very good. I got out of the bath and brushed my teeth while she wrapped a towel around my body. I was led over to the vanity table. She first began putting my hair into the curlers again just like in the salon. They were kept in the curlers and she put a hairnet over my head so I could get dressed. I was led back over to the bed where I sat back on the edge. 2 cloth diapers were pinned on me with the pink-headed pins. These cloth diapers were so large, they spread my legs very far apart. Some plastic rumba panties were pulled up my legs and pulled over my diapers. These panties were so very girly. They were white with rows of lace around the butt area. Next I stood up so I could wear my corset. A bright white corset with pink linings was put on me. The corset seemed much smaller as my stomach must have shrunk a little already. I felt so feminine and girly wearing that corset. Next, 2 starch white petticoats were put on me. They were very old-fashioned with taffeta in them. They fell just a little above my knees. The bodice was so very tight, as she zipped them up in the back. Next came that beautiful dress we bought. It was white as the snow. The sleeves were very puffy and the bodice was very tight that extenuated my corset figure. It billowed out even more than the other dress. A large collar and a very gigantic bow finished it out. The dress was lined with pink trimmings all along the side. She buttoned up the many buttons in the back and tied the bow. I felt so nice wearing that dress. She rolled up pure white stockings up my skinny legs that went up close to my panties. Next I was wearing very lacy ankle socks and some white Mary Janes with a 1-inch heel. I was used to walking in heels, so this was no trouble for me. I was led back over to the vanity table where my curlers were taken off. She took an extra long time brushing my hair. She placed a large white bow in the back of my very blonde, very curly hair. She put on just a little makeup. Some pink lipstick, a little foundation, a little eyeshadow was put on me. Next came some small gold earrings. She then put on the gold chained cross around my neck that fell right below my collar. She then put some light pink fingernail polish on my fingers. When the last finger was painted, I was finished getting ready. I was led over to a large mirror to look at myself. I looked so pretty, and so young. I did look like a girl receiving her first communion. My mother looked so proud at me as she kissed my cheek. "You look absolutely perfect, sweetie. Let's get your purse and your coat, then we can go." I was beginning to get a little nervous about going into public. My heels clicked louder as we walked the wooden floors of her house. I got a lovely cashmere white coat that was so feminine and girly. It covered my dress and fell right below my knees. I buttoned it up and put on my pure white purse as we left the house. I sat in the back as we drove off to church. We were one of the early ones to arrive, so we got a seat right in the middle up front. My mother seemed to know everybody, and I was introduced to many people. So many people that I believe I lost count. I met a lot of the elderly, which seemed to be what the town was made up of. I also met some young girls and some young boys who looked at me very longingly. One of the boys looked at me very lovingly that it sent shivers up my spine, and I peed in my diaper right there. Thankfully, the service began, as the church became very full. I behaved very well in church that morning. It was so nice looking at the very well-dressed men and women. Before I knew it, the Mass had ended. We were walking out of the church, as we were one of the last to leave. As we were leaving, the priest stopped us to talk. I listened intently on their conversation. "Well, hello Mrs. O'Hara. Good morning Father Holmes. It was a lovely service this morning." "Why thank you, and who is this beautiful young lady?" "This is my daughter, Rose." I curtsied deeply for the father and spoke a very soft hello to him. "Well, it is nice to finally meet you. I will look forward to seeing you in school on Monday morning. Have a nice morning Mrs. O'Hara, and you too, Rose." His words shook me as we walked away. My mother smiled and explained. "You heard him correctly. You will be attending St. Joe's Academy for young ladies tomorrow. I know you still wear diapers, young lady. But you still need to attend school. We will need to get you the uniforms today." I felt scared about going to a new school. But as my mother drove, she reassured me that everything would be okay and that I would make many friends. We found, Just Me Apparel, a small uniform shop in town. We walked in, a man was working behind the desk. Luckily there was nobody else in the store. The man would give us his fullest attention as we went into the back. He and my mother discussed some things quietly, as I waited patiently. After they were finished, my mother began taking off my clothes as the man went to get some things. He came back with so many items. I was stripped down to my corset, plastic panties, tights and diapers. The man just smiled at me when he saw my diapers. He gave me a white camisole that fit just perfectly. Then he handed me a short-sleeved blouse that had to be buttoned in the back. This was going to be worn during the warmer months. My mommy helped with the blouse. It was the frilliest one in the store with a very large collar. She then had me wear a small petticoat that fell just a little above my knees. Then the jumper that I would be wearing. The school colors were green and white, which was the color of the jumper. It just covered my petticoat. The school was embodied in the upper left breast. The jumper fit tightly around my hips when she zipped it up. My mother liked the tight look on me. Next, some black Mary Janes were put on my feet. They too had 1-inch heels. The uniform code had to have shoes of at least 1 inch. Next, a little bow was put on my collar on my blouse and another in my hair, which was the school colors. I twirled around in my new look. My mother liked the look of my uniform, so we got many, as I put back on my dress. We put the packages in the car and left the store. The uniform looked so nice on me and I couldn't wait for school to start tomorrow. The day was young and very beautiful. The sun was out, and there was not a cloud in the sky. After some delay, we finally did make it to the park. Since it was so nice outside, I did not wear my coat. My mother told me about my new school. She told me about when she went as a little girl. She went into grave detail about the dances they had and her wonderful boyfriends she had. I could only smile and blush. I could not understand what was happening to me. Each day, I would slip more and more into my new role and my resistance was shrinking. I could not stop anything and I could not control these new feelings. It felt so strange to me, but my mother reassured to me that it was natural, as I was becoming a woman. Since it was becoming late in the afternoon, we decided to head home. I wet my diaper twice today and I needed a changing badly. Every time I wet my diaper, I would lose more and more control of bowels. When we got home, we put the packages in my room. My drawers were becoming full of clothes for me to wear. I had a light dinner and prepared for my first day of school tomorrow. My mother gave me a beautiful pink Barbie backpack with all the accessories. Most of my school supplies I would find tomorrow in my desk. I took off my pretty dress for it was getting late for me. I had my diaper changed, and I wore my nightgown again. I brushed my teeth and hopped into bed. My mother tucked me in and kissed me goodnight. I will wake you up very early to get ready for school tomorrow, sweetheart. Don't worry your little head off. You will be fine tomorrow. After battling a few nerves, I did get some sleep that evening. That evening, I dreamed of me at the fall dance being the prettiest girl in the whole school and dancing with a very handsome young man. Soon enough, my mother came and awoke me. My diaper was soaked, as usual, but she did not mind. I put on my slippers and had my breakfast. After I ate my oatmeal, I went back upstairs to my room. A bath was ready for me and my mother followed me in. She took my clothes and I slid in the tub while she put on her rubber apron. She washed my hair thoroughly along with the rest of my body. I smelled so feminine. In my towel, I was led over to my vanity table. There she curled my hair some more and put on my hairnet. Now it was time for my uniform. She put on me my 2 cloth diapers and pinned them on closely to me with the pink-headed pins. She said she would change me when I would get home from school this afternoon. Next, some white plastic panties. These seemed to be different than the others. They had more rows of lace than I have ever seen. She tightens my corset just a little for the weight that I had lost. Next, I wore a lacy pure white camisole. Next, I put on my blouse that she helped button in the back. The blouse was short-sleeved and had ruffles around the large collar and the sleeves. The petticoat came on next. It was very frilly and came just above my knees. I put on my beautiful jumper. The jumper ended a little lower than my petticoats. It was very tight around my corset waist. The sleeves of my blouse could be clearly seen. My Mary Janes came on next. They were 1 inch and very tight. My mother said they made me feet look better. 2 green and white bows I wore, one around my collar, the other on top of my now very curly blonde hair. I wore a little makeup. She repainted my fingernails and some small diamond earrings were put on my ears. I got my backpack. My mother gave me a small white purse to carry in my hands and I was then ready to go. I sat in the back as my mother drove me off to my new school. We finally got there and I was shocked to see the size. It was a large building that was stone white. It looked very symmetric on top of the hill. I got out of the car clutching my purse closely. My mother rolled down her window. "I'll be here when school gets out, sweetie. Have a great first day of school." She smiled and kissed me on my cheek and drove off in the distance. I took a deep breath and walked up the steps of the school. I was walking down the hallway and noticing that most girls only had to wear skirts, while I was in jumper. Suddenly, Father Holmes says to me, smiling, "Well, good morning, Rose. You look a little lost." I nodded my head in confusion. "That's okay, I'll show you to your room." He led me to another part of the building where he said my class was. He got to the door and told me this was my class. I was so nervous going in that I wet my diaper. I walked in and saw a couple of classmates and I saw my teacher. "Mrs. Matthews, this is Rose," and she got a little lost. Mrs. Matthews was a very beautiful woman. She had long reddish-orange with a lot of freckles on her face. Her skin was an angelic white as she took my hand. "Welcome to 7th grade, Rose. Your seat is on the side next to Annabelle." I smiled and walked over to my seat. There was a sign on my desk that had my name on it. I sat down in my chair and opened up my desk. I saw many textbooks, some notebooks, pens, pencils, and many various school supplies. "I'm your desk mate, Annabelle." I looked up and saw a beautiful young girl. She had deep brown eyes and long beautiful brown hair. She had a beautiful smile that she flashed to me. I spoke quietly back to her. "I'm Rose O'Hara. Nice to meet you." We shook hands and began talking before class started. Soon, class began and our class filled up. The first thing I noticed was that no other girl was wearing petticoats, and I definitely knew that nobody else was wearing a diaper. I felt so silly being back in 7th grade, but I never did well in school. Maybe I could do better as a girl. I hoped so. Our teacher began discussing the school rules, which were typically school rules. The rules were a little stricter, stressing femininity and corporal punishment. She said many girls have had spankings here, even seniors. She also said that our uniform would change to skirts once we reached the freshman year. She also began discussing our subjects. I was surprised to see that we would be taking a sex class. Our teacher said we would be developing soon, and we should know all about our bodies. She also said that this semester we would learn sewing and next semester we would learn cooking. Finally, lunchtime came, and we were dismissed. Annabelle and I walked to the lunchroom. We ate with the 8th graders who were older, and I did notice that some of them had grown little mounds. Annabelle and I found a table and we had made a quick friendship. I liked her very much and she liked me too. She talked about her strict mother and how much she loved and respected her. I told her about my loving mother. We found that our pasts are very much similar, except that she's all women. It was hard for me to see myself as boy anymore. Quickly enough, lunch was over, and we went back to class to continue our lessons. At the end of the day, Mrs. Matthews announced that the monthly dance was this Friday. Annabelle and I agreed to go shopping together for a dress. I couldn't wait. I said my goodbye to Annabelle and went outside. I found my mother waiting for me, and I went over to her. I gave her a big hug. I missed her so much. I went into the car and we drove home. I told her all about my day. I told her about my friend Annabelle and she said she knew her mother. I told her about the dance on Friday, and about how Annabelle and I would go shopping together. I was so excited that again I peed in my diaper on the ride home. We got back home, and she said that she would meet me in my bedroom. I set my backpack and my purse down against the wall. My mother already had another diaper ready for me. She quickly changed my wet diapers into clean ones. I told her that I was the only one wearing petticoats. I assumed that, but I still